Okay, we're going to talk about the Fountain of Youth. Um, y'all are probably all familiar with the concept of the Fountain of Youth, and you've heard the old thing in Ponce DeLeon and stuff. And if you've seen Pirates of the Caribbean, they have this ideal in it too. But it takes a special thing too to make it happen, didn't it? And it took a life, and there's all these things that had to go with it that you never thought they had to go with it, did you? Well, there's a lot more to the story, and it goes back even a lot more than they're going to even tell you now, and I'll talk about it too as we talk about the different ways in which a symbolic fountain of youth are used, because the fountain of youth is known as a mythical spring, which is an important word here. Keep that in mind. Spring isn't necessarily a spring of water or a wellspring, for it can be a season, and it can be an action, such as jumping up, growing, quickly doing something, as in plants spring up, things along that nature. But it's this mythical spring that restores the youth of anyone who drinks or bathes in its water. And we're familiar with this, but usually you have to drink it, right, or something like that. But you can see this same thing in the chalice of Jesus. And this idea of the Holy Grail, which we're going to touch on too, and I am now, and how if you drink it, it'll save somebody. Like what's shown in the Spielberg movie. When Indiana Jones and his father gets shot, and he's probably going to, go bad or whatever, will pour some on his wound, and it just fixes it all, right? I mean, it's this panacea, basically, which means, and we'll get into that here in a second too. Panacea is something like a cure-all, fix-all. This fountain of youth was a way that all the things that had gotten to you in a way could all be taken away, and you were back to your youth. But there's a lot of things that are in this. So tales such as a fountain have been recorded around the world for thousands of years, appearing in the writings of Herodotus, which we'll get into, Alexander romances, and the stories of Prester John, which were during the early crusades of the Templars. Hence Holy Grail situation. And that was in the 11th and 12th centuries, but it carried on much further than that. And you know the story still to this day. People kind of talk about it, and there's women's treatments for their face. It's the fountain of youth, and you put it on, and it takes your wrinkles away and things like that. We'll talk about some more things like that. Stories of similar waters were also prominent among the people of the Caribbean during the age of exploration. So when the first people got over here, they had heard of a thing that was like a fountain of youth. And I'm going to get into that in a minute too. But the first explorers who spoke of restoration powers in the mythical waters of Bimini, which is these little islands over here that they hit that are off the Bahamas and so on, Nassau. And what's funny is right there they've got a resort now that's Nassau, Bahamas is Atlantis, and they've even got this underwater thing that looks like it's all built into it. It's a huge, almost aquarium, but actually you're looking into part of the ocean that's been trapped there. It's incredible. Based on these many legends, explorers and adventurers looked for the elusive fountain of youth or some other remedy to aging. Generally associated with magic waters, these waters might have been a river or a spring or any other water source that was said to reverse the aging process and cure sickness when drunk or bathed in. And you know the idea of holy water now, how they could just bless it and say, God, try to make this special water, and then poof, right? And the concept that we go along with that. Some of this goes along with just belief systems, right? But let's look at this pagan crap, okay? Here's a picture, just to start with, a representation of such. And what you have here, let me see how I can get that. So what you're seeing here is a representative of a bunch of people coming, and if you'll look, it's from a town that's near there, and there's this sacred pool, and somehow the water's still flowing, just magically. And a lot of times there's a cupid peeing in the water and these types of situations, or a goddess pouring water out of a vase, or there's lions and things like that around on that shows lions and stuff too. But what you see here, let me zoom in just a little bit. If we looked at the full scene here, what we've got going on, give you a good look at it, and then we'll go back over it. Right? Horses, and these people that are younger, and a lot of old people, right? So what we have here is something that's like a bunch of old people showing up, and this one's pleading to this one like, well, what are you even doing here, Margaret? You know, but what we see is old people having to be carted there by younger people on his back, on a carryall, right? And she's praying and stuff, and so this is this cure pond that these people are going to. And you don't really find any religion in this much, except for you do find one guy here with it looks like a Bible or a big book, and he's a monk type person because he's bald on the very top, and he appears to be checking this old lady out, probably to see if she has some kind of disease or leprosy or something else, or who knows, maybe he's just gazing, right? So but that's just blatant. So all these ladies are getting in the water. If you look right here, all the ladies we're looking at are all gray-haired, and they're all old, and they're getting in the water and starting to move around and play and bathe in the water. And if you'll look at the second half of it, you didn't notice it before, but now all of a sudden you notice that they're not as dingy anymore, right? And they are fair-skinned, and then their hair is back to a color of youth, right? And then they're stepping back out, and we'll get into that in a minute. But this always reminds me, you know, I tell you that things, whenever I was growing up, it was always in your face. It was always in my face. And during the time I grew up, there was just a lot of it. And have you ever seen the movie Cocoon? I know it's kind of about aliens and stuff, but you remember how they had the cocoon in the pool, and the old people got in the pool. This is how they figured it out. The old people got in the pool, and all of a sudden they were like getting it with their old ladies again and dancing like crazy and jumping and doing cannonballs like you were a kid at the swimming pool. Again, it totally had this going on. You can see this girl swimming here, and these are a little bit of caressing going on, but they're all washing and rinsing their hair out and stuff, and all the dinge is taken away, and the old is taken back to youth, right? But women listening, and hopefully guys can understand this from a feminine standpoint, when a woman gets all dressed up and or colors her hair perhaps to a youthful color, it's a sexy exuberance, and it's a rebirth in a way. And I'm not talking about whenever you actually get a total makeover type situation, but something along that line. And here you go. And so you can see there's 4 or 5 blondes here, and redheads, some browns. You don't really see any black hair in any of this, and you didn't over here either, but they're all gray-headed, except for this little kid here that's helping out grandma. And what you also notice is that they're going over here, and this looks very familiar to people who've ever seen old swimming things, because people would come out to the beach and they would change into their swimsuits, which weren't naked, but they were actually pretty much a full set of clothing, right? Full set of pajamas. type situation now. It wasn't anything like we have nowadays, but people were extremely modest. And so it wonders, if this was just supposed to be some sexual reference and things like that, where you get an idea. And if you think of women bathing, whoa, that's porn back then, right? But here's this changing room. So they're changing. And you can see that these people are kind of getting a little sexy in the bushes. That's risque for back then. So is this. So is this. And there appears to be some type of Thanksgiving going to go on here. But look at these people dancing. And so they're all dancing and they're going around in circles and coming out and doing this line dancing and things. And we know that that's not necessarily so Christian of a thing that we think of nowadays. But we can think of this in a different light. And I don't want to blow all my cookies here before we even start, but I want to keep the firecrackers going, if you know what I'm saying. For you had to rinse for you went into the church. And you want to be cleaned up. And you want to be nice. And you want to be all gussied up. And you want to wear your Sunday best. No, you don't want to look like you just came out of the field over here and have the worn and dinge on you. You want to be all dolled up. You want to be Cinderella out. Now, guys don't do this so much because the girls are the peacocks of the two, if you think about it correctly. They're the ones that are dolling themselves up a whole lot extra. And it's always one animal that does it or another. And you don't really find it both doing it because that would just freak out. In fact, what's going on nowadays, sometimes you can see. Some people aren't supposed to be a peacock or a parrot. But that's okay. So in this ideal, you can see that there's this sacred pool. And so you think of swimming pools and kid and everything in that type of activity. But just bathing themselves and how it, maybe these people look dingy, but man, they get all gussied up and they look all brand new. But there's a whole nother hidden thing here with the idea of baptism. For you might come in one person and come out another if you choose to. You follow me? You can get your hair colored. You can get all youthful about things, and women, it's expected to go so, especially if you start ever turning gray, then we're going to start coloring our hair and doing things. But nowadays it happens whenever you're young, and they bleach it out and turn it blue and purple and all kinds of crazy colors. But hey, we did crazy stuff when we were kids sometimes too, so it's all our damn fault because we were liberal. So they're like, oh yeah, hold my beer. So you can see these people taking this bath and doing this thing, and so very much like a baptism situation where you get this rebirth and you're said to be reborn, right? Everybody knows these phrases and these common things that comes out of it. So this is just like Jesus, yeah, into the waters and out, and it's supposed to be symbolic, goes all the way back to the flood, where you went into the flood, you went under the waters and came out, and all this situation that goes along with that. But we're talking about the elixir of life. We're talking about fountain of youth. What's that got to do with that? Well, a fountain is just water coming out of a spigot, which is cool. This thing that's up here, the Romans and stuff made aqueducts where they took some extra forced water and they were able to make constant fountains. And the fountain overflows just a little bit down into their sewer system and helps keep flushing it. So it's kind of neat. It's like interim, hey, why don't we make it go this cool thing? And people won't even have any idea how it works. And it's magic. You see people bathing in the fountain. People will go and they'll take a coin and they'll make a wish and they flick it into this fountain. And you're supposed to wish for, not supposed to tell anybody, but you're supposed to wish for long life, longevity, health, all these things that these people are wishing whenever they get in this side of the pool and end up having out of this side of the pool. And this is something mankind has wanted way before recorded time. Because I'll throw another firecracker out here. They're going to talk about different times that it goes through, and I'll go through that. But I want you to think about that baptism thing. But I also want you to think of the most ancient story we have as an epic is Gilgamesh. And in Gilgamesh's story, he was looking for immortality. And after finding Noah, Utnapistim, he was told he can't do that for him. I mean, that was granted to him by the gods, but you can't make that happen. You could, by doing great things or doing this, that, and the other, which him and Enkidu do, but in a bad way, apparently, and it costs Enkidu his life. That's another story. But it's the same story, for he woes over his best friend so badly, and he tries to figure out, I'm going to die too, and all this stuff. And so Utnapistim had told him about this sacred plant that was down in this pool or well type of thing that he could get. And if he got that plant, it wouldn't give him immortality, but it would like grant him back his youth. And so he got some of it, and I don't know why he didn't eat some right then, but he was so tired after finding it and so exhausted, he took a little bath, and then he got back up out of the little spring water, and a giant snake had eaten his immortality thing, and it sheds its skin, and he goes, oh, see, he ate it, he got the new thing, and mine is gone. And so it's an epic about people wanting, immortality and things, and from the earliest of times of us knowing that we're going to die eventually, we have this idea and want of longevity. And it's not that we want to live to be 120 and be old granny at 70 and spend 50 at old granny and can't walk anymore, but we'd like to be able to do something like this. I'll get into more of that as we go. Let's drop back out here. And so could be a bathing pond, but a lot of times people drink it. What goes on with that? Well, so I'm showing you a few different things, and it's kind of all been thrown into one in some of these pictures, but it's just a concept of thing. And so the legend became particularly prominent during the 16th century when it was attached to Spanish explorer Ponce DeLeon. We know he was in Florida and in the islands there looking for it. He was the first governor of Puerto Rico. Ponce DeLeon was supposedly searching for the fountain of youth when he was told by the Amerindian Indians that the fountain of youth was in Bimini Island. So this is where we find the Bimini Road and such as that. And that's a little odd too. God, I gotta get this right. It's gonna have to be all of this, isn't it? So Herodotus mentions a fountain containing a special kind of water in the land of the Macrobians, which gives the Macrobians their special longevity. We've talked about this a couple of times when we talk about Ethiopia and so on. But this, the way they drew the map and the way they knew the world back then, they don't have the point down on India. They haven't fleshed out the point of Europe up here, but also they don't have sub-Saharan Africa exist. They think the Nile curls around and goes over the Atlas Mountains, and there's Atlantis written right there, by the way, in a lot of these maps. The brown areas are all where they call Ethiopians. And so it's the end of river valleys everywhere, and it's basically farmers and stuff. And people have taken that out of context, because the people living in the area called Ethiopia today was Abyssinia until not too much long ago. And so these Macrobians were the ones that lived down in the Horn. So this would basically be like Somalians and stuff of today, but that's not what they talk about. So they tell you they're real tall, fair-haired people, and they live long lives. Now, to give it some context here, they tell you the people that live just past them here are dog-faced people, and somewhere right down here, or right over here, they describe people that only have 1 foot, but it's a giant foot, and the sun is so hot there, so that's why they always say, oh, it's got to be down here. The sun's so hot there that during the sun, they flip up on their back and they stick their foot up in the air and block it like a shade tree with 1 foot. So different stories are told, and people know now that Herodotus didn't get too far down the Nile for his stories and a lot of his stuff. I mean, he tells you there's giant ants that eat gold and all this type of stuff. But the Acrobians were people that lived long lives, and they were the fairest of people, and they were tall as hell and all this. And he was like, well, what causes that? Now, this is a thing in a time where when people didn't know what was way out there, they started to make up crap about what was way out there, and they heard things from people, and perhaps it was told in their folklore and twisted a little bit, and next thing you know, they'll tell you, well, these people over here, they got griffins, you know, and what's that? Well, it's this thing, and it's fast as hell, and it does this, and da-da-da, and everything. Well, that's a horse. But you don't know, or this, that, and the other, or maybe this is the seeing of a triceratops skull, and then trying to put 2 and 2 together and not realizing dinosaurs and blah, blah, blah. People have talked about that, and finding giant bones and saying, oh, that giant's that big, and it's just really a leg bone of a brontosaur or something, and therefore, no. And dragons, hey, they found a T-Rex head, and they go, hey, this is something that looks, this is a dragon. It's a lizard head. Well, look how big it is. You know, and so this was the giant snake and all these stories, and you can imagine back in the way old times as shamans, they found them and stuff. There are pictures of vases in Greece where they have one of these effigies, and they're doing this stuff to it, and ceremonies wrapped around it, and I'm not going to go into that, but there's Macrobians, and they live extremely long lives. Now, he tells you the ichthyophagid then in turn question to the king concerning the term of life and diet of his people, and were told that most of them lived to be 120 years old, while some of them even went beyond that age. They ate boiled fish and had for their drink nothing but milk. So they're farmers and cattle people and goats and stuff, whatever. When the ichthyophagy showed wonder at the number of years, he led them to a fountain wherein they had washed. He found their flesh all glossy and sleek, as if they had bathed in oil, like anointing oil, and a scent came from the spring like that of violets, right? Like a floral scent. The water was so weak, they said, that nothing could even float on it like a boat. Neither wood nor any lighter substance, but all went to the bottom. If the account of this fountain be true, it would be their constant use of the water from which it makes them so long lived. But that's weird. It's like the opposite of the Dead Sea, because in the Dead Sea, nothing will sink. And people bathe in the Dead Sea, and it's mineral water, so it's just a flip-flop of this concept. But they're said to be way up in the Horn of Africa. And there's other people all over, for really what we're looking at is the extremities of the world. There are stories about people in the Orient that had this idea. There's people over here that had the idea. They found the New World and they go, they got the idea. They found it in India. So a story of the water of life, which is very similar, but you know, there's this old story in D&D and stuff, these elves can give you this elixir of life and it'll heal you, so you can get, you know, near dead and have some type of critical wounds and stuff, short of having your head cut off. Slam this thing down and you're brand new. You know, that type of thing. Sure, you have a healing potion, but it only heals you X. But there's these other special potions you can get. Like in my D&D game, I ought to go to it right now and show you there's healing stones. So it's like a philosopher's stone or a healing stone and things that you can have. Sure, there's healing deals, but they only heal you, you know, 7,500 hit points or 75,000 hit points. And whenever you're sitting at almost 400,000, that's like No, if I'm in the middle of getting beat up and I get low and I hit it to save me, I've got to take one of those stones. Lesser dungeons, no big deal, but that's not the point. Let's get into this. The water of life appears in Eastern versions of the Alexander romances, and so he would have gotten this from out in that area, and the Persians and stuff, yeah. Or they got for a picture, yeah. So they show all kinds of depictions along with it. It describes Alexander the Great and his servant crossing the land of darkness. Did it show it here? No. But it's a mythical land enshrouded in perpetual darkness. It was usually said to be in Abkhazia, officially known as Hansun or Hamsun, or simply the forest of Abkhazia. And this is like in so many movies, really, and even in The Wizard of Oz and the Dark Forest and everything. But there's bad forest, and Lord of the Rings, there's bad forest, and well, you can put that in anything, right? I mean, there's bad forest crap in a lot of stuff. But to find the restorative spring, so they were crossing the land of darkness, and eventually it's supposed to be after great saga, just like in Gilgamesh. He had to go to the ends of the earth, and then was told by a person there where this was. This is the same idea as you go up to the great yogi sitting on the top of the mountain somehow in K2, or Everest, and he's supposed to be this guy up there that he knows everything. You go up, you ask him a question, and he can give you the answer of life. But the answer of life is, how can I do it? Well, the riddling out of that, so this is past that with Gilgamesh, where he says, well, what do I do then? And he goes, well, there's this plant that can leave you everything. A lot of people have related this to cannabis, because in these cultures, they're using this soma drink and so on that contains it, along with opium and things like that, to go along with it. And I remember a kid, I found out about that, and I didn't really know what it was. I mean, it was poppy is what they called it. So I'm like, that's a flower that you can get, and that doesn't make any sense. My sister's got an older boyfriend and everything, and Wizard of Oz is on there, and poppies and stuff and everything, and they went to sleep, right? And then the guy says, that's heroin. And I already knew what that was, because, the war on drugs was already on. And so I knew what that was, but you find out from later you make it out of that, and it's really opium, and then you've got to make it like into heroin or something, and people can go to sleep basically forever. And not to go into that kind of crap, but that has something to do with it too. But they also put ephedra in there, which helps you breathe, but it's almost like a speed kind of thing. So now it makes you wonder, when these people go through this, they drink these drinks that got something to do with it, and all of a sudden they're dancing around and having a great time and feel like the time of their youth, all of a sudden having a great time and the time of their life. I know whenever you have a glass or two of wine, you feel pretty lit. Can you imagine if you had something with a little bit of Coke in it or something like that? Or you might get a little lit up and feel all young again. The story in turn derived from Middle Eastern legends about Al-Qadir. Is it going to show it? Yeah, here's Al-Qadir. All this ancient Aryan stuff. A sage who appears in the Quran, Arabic, and Al-Jamaido, of versions of the Alexander romance, were very popular in Spain during and after the period of the Moorish rule, where they got into Spain. Didn't quite get to Barcelona up there in the pink. Hannibal Barca did. That's what it's Barcelona. And would have been known for the explorers who journeyed to America. So they would have known this thing, and they're saying that's where they got it and they wanted this thing. I'll get into sailors doing it here in a minute. These earlier accounts, inspired by the popular medieval fantasy, The Travels of Sir John Mandeville, and they don't even know if Sir John Mandeville wrote it. He says he's a supposed author, and if you look, that's between 1350, 1371. It's in French. And if you look at this guy, he's kind of blonde, but also he's got elf boots on, kind of, and he's got a captain's hat, just like Captain Crunch. Ding. and which also mentions the Fountain of Youth is located at a foot of a mountain outside Palambe. This is in India. Kalam, where are they going to show you? Kalam, India, and it's down on the coast. And they're supposed to have this spring that was there, that the people there touted as such. And they would, do this same thing that looked like a fountain with, or whatever. Due to the influence of these tales, the Fountain of Youth legend was popular in courtly Gothic art. What are you going to show me? Oh, cool. There's the 3 sacred sages appearing, for example, on the ivory casket with the scenes of the romances. Oh, yes. Let's check that out. Can I get in on that? So you can see there's like a king that's died, right? You can see this picture. There's a dog involved with it too. But they're killing a unicorn or a horse as a sacred burial to go along with it. And you can see that. There's a play of a tambourine, it looks like, here. And if you look up in the tree, there's Jesus or God peeking down through. If you look around, that's all oak leaves. So this is the oak tree. And that's not Jesus, for that's the green man. But yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same deal. And this is apparently the princess. And so they're doing this ritual here. Huh. Isn't that strange? Just going to go on with that. Where did it throw me back down here? Yeah. So it's been shown an example of that in several ivory mirror cases and remained popular through the European age of exploration that we're talking about. Here's another picture of an ivory mirror case. Again, we have the horse idea. These people getting pulled along with just like bobbleheads, big bobbleheads, and we can see who they are. This old as hell person here getting helped along, but they go into this fountain where there's maidens at. They fill a fountain of youth. Don't see a cup to drink or anything. There's that damn dog again. There's the crow or the raven. And you start to get a little idea of how they've blended it left and blended it right. If we get a more outside look to the 4 corners of this thing, or the 4 corners of the zodiac. Isn't that unique? But this is just a mirror case, and you flip it open and there's a mirror in there. And because this is a sign of youth, women are looking at themselves in the mirror and so on, right? Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Well, I could go into Snow White and the jealousy of her mother in her old age and all these things, but let's just keep going on here. European iconography is fairly consistent, as the Cronach painting and mirror case from the 200 years earlier demonstrate. Old people often carried enter the left strip and enter a pool that is as large as space allows. The people in the pool are youthful and naked, and after a while they leave it and they are shown fashionably dressed, enjoying a courtly party, sometimes including a meal. There are countless indirect sources for the tale as well. Eternal youth is a gift frequently sought in a myth and the legends, of course, and stories of things such as the Philosopher's Stone, and I'll have to do a separate video on that, guys, and alchemy and how that works into it. But that actually weaves into the same thing. For whenever you're looking at alchemy, they're trying to turn something into gold, and people used to eat gold and stuff and tried to, do things. There are people still believe today that monatomic gold is this secret to life in these type of situations, but ain't nobody living 120 years that are eating it. And but it's also called the elixir of life, used for rejuvenation and for achieving immortality, right? And even though we look at our current Bible and it looks like a death cult, that set up for people to go to heaven or hell. Jesus was this resurrection, dying and resurrection thing, wasn't he? And people just okay. But Philosopher's Stone, then there's the universal Panaceus, and Panacea is named after the Greek goddess of universal remedies. Panacea is a supposed remedy that is claimed to cure all diseases and prolong life indefinitely. It was in the past sought by alchemists in connection with the elixir of life and the Philosopher's Stone and all this stuff. Why? Well, the Sumerians had this deal, and Noah became immortal and stuff, and how the hell did you do that? And what did he drink? What's it got to do with pine nuts, pine cones, and this, that, and the other, and da-da-da, and all these people trying to figure it out. And this secret stuff that some of the secret societies knew, and probably giggle like hell when people are freaking out over Christmas trees that go all the way back to this time. Also mentions the elixir of life, and here we have a bunny with a little special thing, and this is actually supposed to be milk in a special way that's done here, but then there's this elixir of life, and this is like the, drink it and cure all panacea type situation. It's common throughout Eurasia. Show me a picture. And so we can see that's, bam, real common there. Not heard too much in North Africa, situations like it in Egypt, but all the Proto-Indo-European lands and everywhere they helped out, including China and the Orient and stuff. So it's something that's gone around, but you can imagine there's a lot of people have the story. Pretty blank over here, though. In addition, hint may have been taken from the account of the pool of Bethesda in the Gospel of John, where Jesus heals a man at the pool in Jerusalem. And this has to do with healing pools. And out in front of the churches, there used to be this big old vat, and they made you like wash whenever you went in, but this was like a healing pool. It was a way of christening you or doing these things. And I don't know, some people get some oil put on them and get to have a more in touch with God experience at church. Drink a little sip of wine. But this pool of Bethesda, they're just going to show it out there. So it's a pool in Jerusalem, though, but they also have Abraham's pool and these different pools around in these sacred pools out in front of the temples. Enki is said to have a sacred pool out in front of his, and it had koi in it. But Gospel of John, but then there's the John the Baptist situation too, that they're brushing right over on this pool with these magic effects and how it can help turn a God. Jesus shows up and he's like, what the hell am I doing? You should be baptizing me. Or they put it off this way, so you're supposed to go, oh wow, he's just a man, but he's a God, and he's these things, and there's this God, but he's just a man. But man gets reborn into, maybe I can do that, and you strive for it. Anyhow, Bimini and the Fountain of Youth. Whoa. According to legend, the Spanish heard of Bimini from the Arawaks in Hispaniola in Cuba. This is whenever they first met the natives here. And the Caribbean islanders described a mythical land of Bimini, or Benini, hence Bimini, a land of wealth and prosperity, which became conflagrated with the fountain legend by the time of Ponce DeLeon. The land was thought to be located northwest towards the Bahamas, called La Vella. During the Ponce expedition, the natives were probably referring to the area occupied by the Maya, which would have actually been back over in the mainland the other way, totally. But this land also became confused with Bianca or Bayuca, mentioned by the Juan de Solis, although Solis's navigation data placed it in the Gulf of Honduras. It was this Bianca that originally held a legendary fountain of youth, rather than Bimini itself. Sequene, an Arawak chief from Cuba, reportedly was able to resist the lure of Bimini and its restorative fountain, and he gathered a troop of adventurers and sailed north, never to return. Well, hell, if you went north and you never returned, then you probably did this, or maybe he is, and here we are again, and he went to the edge of the world, and so on. Now, at this time, they haven't really figured out that Florida even attaches to the rest of it, and it's considered to be an island. That's where it gets its name. There's a lot of flowers and plants in Florida, right? Well, there's this idea that somebody presented whenever I was a kid, and I was like, that makes so much damn sense with this other thing that wasn't quite making sense, and put it together, and that makes sense. For this fountain of youth, and the reason they got the idea of this is these sailors, by the time they got here, would be edging, if not there, on scurvy. And so what fixes scurvy is vitamin C and stuff, and you need to rehydrate yourself with good water. And these islands had all this fresh rainwater and everything that's real good, but also they had oranges. Florida's known for it, but they had fruits that could give you vitamin C, so these people that would be just eat up with it by the time they got over here could eat a few of these things and drink their water, and then all of a sudden they felt like $1 million and going around chasing some Indian woman or something, you know. So they thought that had a lot to do with it. I won't go farther with it. This is going to actually go into 2 parts, isn't it? I'm at 41 minutes. Anyhow, found within the saltwater mangrove swamp that covers 6 kilometers of the shoreline, North Bimini is a healing hole, a pool that lies at the end of a network of winding tunnels. During outgoing tides, these channels pump out cool, mineral-laden freshwater in the pool. Because it was well carved out of the limestone by groundwater thousands of years ago, it's especially high in calcium and magnesium, and this is mineral water. We drink this today and everything, which has been shown to improve longevity and reproductive health. But it helps a whole lot in the fact that you're having it alkaline too. You want the water you're putting in your body to be alkaline, so you aren't putting acidic water in there. And whenever you get this RO stripped water in there, it can be real low pH and stripped. So they put some minerals back in it. We did it all when we make up artificial salt water, and then you have to boost the alkalinity way up along with the salts and get it right for things to live in that. But that's salt water, not fresh water. We still want an alkalinity to go along. It's present in large quantities in seawater, while not known whether any legend about healing waters is widespread among the indigenous people of the Caribbean. The Italian-born chronicler Peter Martyr attached such a story drawn from the ancient and medieval European sources to his account of the 1514 voyage of Juan Diaz de Solis in a letter to the Pope in 1516, although he did not believe the stories and was dismayed that so many others did. And the Vatican still has this today. So let's see how much we've got left. Ponce DeLeon and the other part of it. Man, I wish I could just go ahead and get through this. Let's see if we can. Not going to talk about it necessarily, but basically, if you could read it yourself, but they told you that people would visit these fountains, and frail old men came so completely restored that he could resume all manly exercises, take on a new wife, and begot more children even. And this is again like that cocoon idea where all of a sudden, boom, you get this fountain of youth idea. There's this fountain of youth archaeological park, and it's in St. Augustine, Florida. Like the grass that they have, golf courses a lot of times, well, a lot of that's Bermuda. Boom, there's another one too. So these grasses that are over here that are all smooth to walk on and things that everybody's got in their yards now work off of this. But they found a fountain of youth concept was performed around this little fountain, and these digs revealed a large number of Christianized Temuca local burials, and that eventually showed that this park was the oldest park, or the oldest mission in the United States, and so it's called Mission de Dios, Mission Nombre de Dios, sorry. And so it's back at 1587. So maybe I'll just leave it as a mystery on things. There's nothing that's going to bring back your youth. We'd think there would be a Star Trek pill, and just like that lady would get up, you know, and run down the hallway, and they'd have to start chasing her. But some of these narcotic things, like cocaine and so on, just a little bit of it will light you up a little bit. Yeah, so some things like that are probably involved with this idea too. Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy, and we'll go on to the next